Hey everyone, it's Emily from Life So Savory, and today I'm going to show you how to make a gorgeous and easy lined zipper pouch. This is a perfect zipper project to get you started if you're not used to sewing zippers and you just need a few materials. You need a zipper as long as your fabric. You need two zipper tabs that started out as a piece of fabric 3 inches long by 2 inches wide. Iron it in half again, and then cut it in half. Now your fabric can be cut any size that you want, but we're going to cut our zipper so that it is an inch shorter than your fabric, which will end up to be 3/8 inch shorter on each side. And we're going to account for a little bit extra once we've sewn the zipper tab on. So I'm going to cut off both sides of my zipper, including the pull tab side and the other tab side. That just makes it a little bit cleaner and easier to sew. So you can see I've cut off from the pull tab side, and I'm going to pin on the fabric tab here. And then I'm going to place it onto my grid so I can really measure exactly 3/8 of an inch on each side. And I'm going to place the left side where I put my fabric tab 3/8 of an inch from the end of the fabric. Then I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch from the fabric on the right side with my pencil, cut there. Then by the time I place the fabric tab on there and sew, it will be 3/8 of an inch from that right side of the fabric. And you can go ahead and check this and adjust the fabric and the cutting, but again, you want it 3/8 of an inch from each side of the fabric, which will be your seam allowance when we're sewing. So now you're going to go ahead and with a zipper foot on your sewing machine, sew that fabric to both sides of your zipper. I recommend only using plastic zippers for this so that you can sew right over them and you don't break any needles. Of course, if you want to use a zipper that is metal, you can go ahead and try to sew over it, but that includes a lot more difficulty because you have to sew over the metal teeth and you have to be way more careful. Switch your zipper foot to the other side and sew the fabric tab on the other side of the zipper. You're trying to sew as close as possible to the folded edge of the fabric and close to the zipper. The folded edge that is away from the zipper is on my left side, and the folded edge towards the zipper is the one that we're trying to sew closely towards. So we're just trying to attach this to the zipper right now, back stitching on both sides. You can also use a little bit of glue if you're having trouble keeping everything in place. A glue stick works great to help hold it all in place. Once we have this zipper ready to go, now we are ready to move on to the next step of the zipper pouch, which is to put this onto the fabric that we have. And you can check this now to make sure that it's all sewed on straight and you like your stitches. You will see these stitches even in the finished zipper pouch. And I went ahead and trimmed off that extra fabric that was sticking out on either side of my zipper. You don't have to do this, but I think it makes it easier. Now you're going to take your zipper and place the right side of the zipper, so that's the side with the zipper pull, on whichever fabric you are going to make the outside of your zipper. So these heart fabric right here is going to be the outside of my zipper. So I have turned the zipper over and placed the right side down. And then now I'm going to take the inside of my zipper pouch and put it onto the back side of the zipper right like that. So we have a zipper sandwich. So I'm going to pin all 3 of these layers, lining them up on the top right here. Again, if you have trouble lining these up, you might want to take a glue stick and use that to help you keep all of these 3 layers in place. You can also sew one piece of fabric at a time so that you can see the zipper. I like to do it all at once. And here I'm going to open up and show you, I like to pull the zipper tab down a little bit so that I can sew a little bit before I run into that zipper pull. And then I'll show you how I open it up and pull that zipper up to the top so I can continue sewing down. You don't ever want to sew past that zipper, even with your zipper foot, because usually the seam will bump out a little bit. So here I'm going to stop and then lift the presser foot, keeping the needle down. Okay, and then I'm going to pull that zipper pull right here all the way to the back. Usually you can pull it around. Once you've lifted that presser foot, you should be able to pull it under your presser foot, your zipper foot, to the back, and then you can continue sewing, and now it's out of your way. So I like to open it up, the zipper up a little bit, get started sewing, and then you can sew the rest of the way down. Remember, you're keeping all three of those layers, the 2 layers of fabric, the zipper lined up, and you're sewing kind of in the middle of that zipper tape. So it's about a 1/4 inch zipper or seam allowance, I would say, down that zipper. And then you're going to remember you're also back stitching on both sides of the seam, and then you're opening it up, and now you have your zipper sewn in nicely on one side of the zipper pouch. Make sure the fabric that you want on the outside of your zipper pouch is on the top of the zipper. Take that top fabric again, that outside fabric, and place it on the top side of the zipper. Flip it over, and on the back side of the zipper, you're again going to place the lining fabric of your pouch, making sure that the sides of the fabric are lined up so that the sides of the zipper pouch will be lined up when you're finished. That 3/8 inch should be on both sides of that zipper tab that we put that fabric on the end of the zipper when we first did it. And all of that should be lined up, and I'm just clipping it as I go. Again, making sure that zipper pull is somewhere in the middle, and then it makes it easier to sew down there as I'm going through. I like to sort of check that. There's the inside, and then here's going to be the outside. Looks good. And then you're going to sew this down. Again, you're kind of sewing with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once I've sewed down a little bit, I'm going to lift that needle, get that zipper pull out of the way towards the back, so then I can sew the rest of the way down the zipper, and then I shouldn't have to worry about that zipper anymore. So it's a little bit tricky when you're sewing with the zipper, but once you've done it a few times, it's really not a big deal, and you will get used to it. Sorry, my hand's kind of in the way here, but just the best camera angle I could get, trying to show you my workspace plus the sewing machine and quickly put this tutorial together. All right, so now we have the front of the zip pouch and the back side of the zip pouch. So real quickly here, we're going to top stitch around the zipper before we move on to the next step. So you want to either press this, be careful not to melt your zipper, or you can just sort of smooth it with your finger. And again, you're going to top stitch right around all 4 sides of the zipper. I'm keeping my zipper foot on while I'm top stitching. Make sure to keep the lining pulled out of the way and the top of the fabric pulled out of the way. Again, you're going to be moving your zipper pull back and forth as you're going around so that it's not getting in your way as you're top stitching around. So moving, top stitching, pivoting on the corners, and top stitching around all 4 sides where that zipper is. So it's just kind of easy to move around, and you can see here how I'm just stitching pretty close to the zipper but still on the fabric of the pouch. You do have to move the zipper pull a couple times because you're going all the way around sort of in a circle for this top stitching. Once you've back stitched over where you started, you can remove it from the sewing machine, and now we're ready to match the front fabric together and the lining fabric together. All right, so here's the last little tricky bit. You're going to take that zipper tab fabric, and you're going to sort of push it towards the lining. So for me, that's that red fabric. Then you're going to open up that seam allowance. So right here, I'm sort of opening up the seam allowance as flat as I can. So, and then pressing the the zipper tab fabric towards that red lining, opening up the seam allowance flat. So again, pressing the zipper tab fabric towards the lining. So just down a little bit, opening up the seam allowance just to get the seam a little less bulky. And so, down there, and then putting a clip on it. And now the rest of the rest of the pouch, we're just going to pin or clip all the way around. Make sure your zipper is at least half the way open so you can turn this right side out when you're done. You're going to match the corners all the way around, pin or clip your pouch. And then on the bottom side of this, we're not going to sew all the way around because we'll need a hole for turning as well. So on that lining fabric, you're going to leave about a 3-inch hole for turning when we're sewing. So we'll start on the bottom of the lining, sew all the way around, and then finish on the bottom of the lining, leaving an opening right where my fingers are pointing. All right, so we're going to start sewing on that bottom of the lining, back stitching, sewing across a little bit of the bottom of the lining, pivoting at the corner, going up the side of the lining. And then when we get to that zipper tab area, we want to sew as close to the zipper tab fabric as possible, but not sew on it. All right, so where we pushed it towards the lining, we're going to sew close to it, but not on it. And it's a little bit bulky. There's a lot of fabric right there where my fingers are pressing down. You might want to use another piece of metal. I'm using my little seam ripper there to help me push the fabric under. And then it got a little bit stuck, so I had to lift my presser foot and push it under as it was just sort of stuck on the extra fabric. But that's where we have that 3/8 inch from the edge of the fabric because that's the seam allowance. So we're trying to sew as close as possible to that zipper tab fabric, but not really catching it in the seam. And that's going to be fine. It's actually going to be all the way sewn in there. It's going to look great, but it's not going to be caught in the seam, and you're not even going to know that it was not caught in the seam when we're all finished, but it's going to look amazing and give the top of our pouch a super beautiful finished feel. So you're sewing all the way around, then you're getting to the other side of the pouch and you're doing the same thing, sewing as close as possible. Keep that seam allowance. Remember, we had it pressed open so that we're trying to reduce the bulk, and then sewing over it down that bottom of the lining, pivoting on the corners. And then when we get back around to the bottom of the lining, we're going to leave that 3-inch hole for turning, back stitching as we finish, and then we will be almost finished with this project. Clip your corners so they are beautiful and finished. And then we're going to go ahead and turn this zip pouch right side out. You can use something blunt but still sort of pointy to help you poke out the corners. And the final step for this is to sew closed that hole in the bottom of the lining that we used for turning. I'm using here a paintbrush stick to help me poke out the corners. And before you sew the lining bottom closed, it's sometimes nice to use that hole to be able to poke through to get those corners on the bottom nice and poked out. So I usually go through that hole in the bottom of the lining. You can see here I'm going through with my paintbrush, and then you can get those corners nicely poked out. And then I'm going to pull that lining just out a little bit. The seam allowance should, if you give it a little tug, it should tuck in nicely. And then you can pin or clip it over and then just go to your sewing machine. If you want to hand sew this, you can. I just usually put my regular foot back on my sewing machine. No need for a zipper foot here. And then sew this with a seam right next to the edge, nice and tight. Sew that opening closed. It's on the bottom of your zipper pouch. You will not even know that it's in there. You'll be just fine, and you'll be all set for a beautiful zipper pouch here. And there you have a beautiful pouch ready for whatever you need for storage and all of the things that you want to store in your gorgeous pouch. And look at those beautiful tab edges on the top. I just love the way this looks finished. And you can put coordinating zippers or contrasting zippers. They just look beautiful, whatever you decide to use them for. So make lots and enjoy.